The last type of loop that I'm going to look at is called a counted loop. This is also quite commonly referred to as the for loop because many programming languages use the word for as part of the construct, and that is the case in Turing. So the idea of a counted loop is that we have a loop that we want to execute a specified number of times. So again, it's like the idea of counting. So for example, I'm just going to start with something very simple, which is I want to create a loop that's going to count from 1 to 10. And the way that we do that is we use the keyword for. So that's here's the block of code to designate that we have a loop. So for means we're starting a counted loop, and then end for, the end is just like any number of other constructs we've seen. We have if, end if, we have loop, end loop, we have for, end for. And what we do is we specify, in the simplest form, we specify what's our loop going to look like. And so we might say for, and we specify a variable, and then we say what is that variable going to do. So for example, I'm going to use, actually I won't use I'll use count. So I'm going to say for count 1 dot dot 10. So the way this reads, so it's saying that I'm going to create a variable called count, and it's going to be an integer variable, or it's going to be a number. In this case it will be an integer. And then you need to have this colon in place, and then we have our starting value and our ending value. Now right now there's nothing in the body of this loop, but this loop will count from 1 to 10, and then the program will end. And I'm just going to put end of program. I'm going to put that at the end just so I know that I've reached the end of program. So in previous tutorials I've talked about infinite loops, and that's the reason I put this end of program here, so you could see that even with nothing in between, if I run this, well, it immediately gets to end of program. And the reason for that is because a computer is very good at counting, and it counts very quickly. And so it counts from 1 to 10 so fast that it looks like it's instantaneous to us. Now, something we can do to help us keep track is we can actually output what is count. And so if I run it now, well, there we go, 1 to 10, it's immediate. I immediately get 1 through 10 and the end of program. But at least this way you can see that it's actually counting. I could make this a little bit easier to follow if I put in a delay. So how about I put in a delay of half a second. So delay is 500 milliseconds, that's half of a second. And if I run that, every half second it's counting up until it reaches 10, and then we get to end of program. So there you have a counted loop. There are other things we could do to make this a little bit more user-friendly. For example, put the count is, and then I might put, and then I use this dot dot to continue it. And it's really, I haven't changed anything. All I've done is now I'm actually specifying what the count is, and I output that each time, and then we reach the end of program. So that is your basic counted loop. So there are other things we can do to the counted loop. For example, we could count from, there's nothing saying we have to start at 1. We could count from 5 to 10, and if I run that, that just goes 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. There are some other things we can do, and this is where the counted loops start to get a little bit more interesting. Let's go back to 1 to 10, but we can actually add the amount we want to count by. So we can say by, and I can now say I want to count from 1 to 10 by 2s. So this will start counting at 1, but if it's going to count by 2s, it's going to skip. So it's going to go 1, and then it should go 3, 5, 7, etc. And there are a couple of interesting effects of this, so take a look. 1, 3, 5, 7, and notice it never actually counts 10, because when we count up, we first count by 1, 3, 5, 7, 9. So what's the next number that should occur after that? It would be 11, but our loop is only supposed to go to 10. And because 11 is too high, the loop exits and we get end of program. We can also, nothing saying that we have to only count up, we can actually count down as well. So let me reverse this. I'm going to show you a couple of things. First of all, what if I just say I want to count from 10 to 1? It would be nice if the loop recognized this, but unfortunately, if I try to run that, it just runs end of program. Basically, the reason why that occurs is because we started at a count of 10 and we're supposed to go to 1. Well, 10 is bigger than 1, so it immediately exits and never writes anything. Another thing you might try, you might say, okay, well, I want to count down, so I'm going to count down by -1. Unfortunately, although the idea of that is nice, and it would be my preference if this worked, you can see here, down at the bottom we get an error message, 0 or negative for loop step. We're not allowed to count down by a negative number. And so Turing has another way of doing that for us, and what we have to do is we actually have to, we put the word here, decreasing. And I know that's a little bit awkward, but what it's saying is for a decreasing count from 10 to 1, and I don't say by -1, I say by 1, and now if I run this, it starts at 10, and it's going to count down until it reaches 1. And just as we did with the loop that was counting upwards, we could say I want to count down by 3s. So if I run that, oh, it did not like the... Or did I make a mistake here? For decreasing count, 10 to 1, oh, by 1 by 3. I meant to just put by 3. There's my error. So 10, 7, 4, 1, it reaches 1, and then we reach the end of the program. So there we have loops that are counting up, which is the default. Those are known normally as incrementing loops or increasing loops. Then we have loops that are counting down, and you can see that the step size that you use can be specified to be larger than 1 if you like. So that's it. It's a very simple type of loop. It has very specific applications in the sense that it's only for counting up and down. So this is not a generic loop or a general loop. We've covered that in previous tutorials. This is a very specific loop that is used when you want to count up or down by a specified amount.